but anyway, thanks for the opportunity. Basically, I'm just the speaker of this big center. My role is really limited here as to running it more as a coach. So I just wanted to give a quick background. Can people see my screen? I assume they can. The Moser Center has its name from the Mosers, Hugo and Anne Moser. Many of you know Hugo. If you're professionals, if you're patients, you probably haven't heard of him. But Dr. Moser was a very eminent neurologist who basically was at the forefront on this, getting into working on rare genetic diseases in the 1960s, and then got really stuck with leukodystrophies for most of his professional career, and then really focused the last 30 years or so mostly on ALD. He passed away in 2007, and so at Kennedy Krieger, of course, he was there for between 1977 or 76 and 2007. And then after his passing, we basically named our leukodystrophy program after him. So that's where the name comes from. And the team really has grown over the years. So we are a pretty big team. I can't put everybody on one page, so I'm gonna have 2 pages. I thought it's important for people to know the type of services that we offer. So, you know, the heart of the clinic are really the coordinators. And we have 2 nurse coordinators, we have a clinic coordinator and a research coordinator. And they are very active, they're very much on the forefront, the first sort of line of contact. Kim, our most senior nurse, she has been dealing with leukodystrophies for her entire career. I'm not going to say how many years because that would tell you how old she is, and she's young, so she's been doing this since before she was born, because it's more than 30 years or so. Connor has been with us now for about 5 years, has really grown into this position, and many patients know him maybe perhaps too well. They have his cell phone and he gets texts by patients about follow-up appointments and so on. And then our professional team, that from a physician perspective, these are the physicians that we have. We have, we have 3 neurologists. So just wanted to briefly mention a couple of people here that are new. A new old face, old new face, sorry, I'm not sure how to say that correctly, is Dr. Jerry Raymond, who was at the Kennedy Krieger for many years. He left on vacation to University of Minnesota for a few years, and then Hershey, and then came back to Hopkins a couple years ago, running a lysosomal storage disease infusion program, and also seeing leukodystrophy patients again with us at Kennedy Krieger. Dr. Amina Smith-Fine is a MD PhD trained pediatric neurologist and neurodevelopmental pediatrician, who trained with us within our program and has really started working on leukodystrophies since the first year of residency. Her PhD was on demyelinating animal models, so it was a perfect fit for her. And the most recent recruit has been a nurse practitioner, Ira Tanner, who is a former pediatric ICU nurse who became a family nurse practitioner, helping us with the care of the more complex patients in the leukodystrophy program. And then we have 4 rehabilitation medicine physicians. Dr. Trovato is actually the associate director of the center. And then we have Dr. Ye and Dr. Sadowski. And Dr. Sadowski is a spinal cord injury specialist, so she's mostly involved in doing urodynamic studies in our patients in the adult cohort, which is because bladder issues are a very, very big problem there. And then Dr. Bill Ide is a most recent addition. He's one of our own PM&R trainees, who just graduated this year, and again, the last couple of years spent a lot of time with leukodystrophy patients and has gained expertise there. And then we have an endocrinologist, Dr. Hamrahian, who is actually a world-famous expert in adrenal insufficiency, and so it was a good fit for us because we see a lot of patients with ALD. And we had also this year a new palliative care physician, as the old one retired. So Dr. Melanie Brown, who's from University of Minnesota and came down to us just last year, a former PQ doctor, pediatric ICU doctor, who's now focusing on palliative care. And then our team has also genetic counseling, social work, physical therapy. These are key, again, key assets as part of the clinical care we provide. I feel all the time that when patients come down, they're really coming for all these other people, not for the physician necessarily. Julie especially has been really trying to branch out nationally through the COVID and the telehealth transition to try to provide genetic counseling to extended family members, especially in ALD, where you have many family members that are affected. And then we have a pretty active research team. Ann Moser, Hugo's wife, is still around every day, every single day, including weekends, working really hard, and is doing great, and still making new discoveries. She was really the person who essentially developed the initial assay for ALD newborn screening, so this should be credited to her, and she's still been a big advocate for newborn screening in ALD as of today. We also have in my lab, somehow the name fell off, Dr. Christina Mertz, who's basically running our research lab, so that's why her name disappeared for whatever reason, but she's supervising the rest of the lab here, and these are our lab members that are very talented people. So I just thought I'll say briefly what we see the most is AMN and ALD. Like Katie said, I couldn't agree with her more. The transition to adulthood is a big problem, and taking care of adults with ALD or any leukodystrophy is a big problem because there's almost no expertise out there. So we end up dealing with patients that are sometimes in the 60s, 70s. I think our oldest patient is in the late 70s. And we still follow them because there's really not much of a place to go. We are also very focused on a rare leukodystrophy called LBSL, which is a mitochondrial thrombocytopenia. So these three groups are the vast majority of patients we see, and then the other diseases are relatively less common compared to these, where we see around 100 patients a year with ALD or AMN, versus the others where it's more like 4 or 5 for each of the diagnoses. I just wanted to briefly touch on what we are doing research-wise. There are other people who may be doing the same, but one of our main focus has been really in ALD to try to come up with predictive modeling systems that allow us to determine how a patient will look like in a few years from now. And that's really key, not just from a newborn screening perspective, where you're trying to figure out a young man now that you identify through extended family screening or newborn screening, how are they going to look like? Are they going to get sick in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? And there's huge variability in this disease, which is a big hampering factor. So people have been trying to go after one variable and another variable. Some people focus on imaging, some people focus on quantitative motor measures, others look at biomarkers, others look at metabolomics. And we have sort of come to the conclusion that none of them will ever be the holy grail kind of situation. So we have to combine all of them together. And when you do that, you're suddenly dealing with the huge data that is beyond the capacity of normal human beings to analyze. So we have been sort of ganging up with the Hopkins Malone Center for Engineering in Healthcare, which is a dedicated computer engineering center with experts in AI, artificial intelligence, and now we can take all these data points and bring them together to try to come up with prediction tools. And we have some pilot data here, for instance, with metabolomics, but it looks like we're doing pretty well being able to identify patients who are in the mild side of a disease versus the severe side of the disease with ALD versus controls. So this is just preliminary data, and we're trying to currently get funded, and we have some foundation supported work that tries to come up with prediction modeling again. How can we predict a patient's future? And so that's something that we're working on. We have a bunch of studies going on here. So these are ALD or AMN studies. One particular one that I wanted to point out is that we have a pretty comprehensive natural history outcome measure study for the AMN population that is partially funded through the NIH as part of a grant called the GLIA Consortium grant, the GLIA RCDRN. There's also additional foundation support to add neuroimaging there, and we are still seeking NIH support for biomarker studies to add on in there. And then there are a couple of trials that are ongoing, and one that's coming up at least this year, and potentially 2 more next year. The other disease that we are doing the research on most, and that's a lot of our effort right now in the lab, is focused on this disease LBSL, like I mentioned earlier. This is a recently discovered leukodystrophy. It's now basically about 15 years ago when the first paper came out by Mario van der Knap's group in the Netherlands. And it's a highly, again, variable, mostly motor disorder in most cases, although some atypical cases have been described recently that are more severe, early neonatal, almost or prenatal in onset. And so here we are again doing a natural history study, trying to understand disease progression. Dr. Fine is using variable technology to assess patients at home. We started that before COVID happened, and then when COVID happened, everybody started doing it. But so we still are pretty on the forefront there because we have gotten now some follow-up data, and we can demonstrate disease progression using these variables in a small sample size of patients. At the same time, we have taken blood from these patients, and I don't know why, but my PowerPoint is frozen. I'm sorry about that. I was going to show you guys some. Oh, here it is. Okay. We have generated induced pluripotent stem cells from blood samples in 7 of these LBSL patients. And then basically these induced pluripotent stem cells, with the help of Dr. Ying at Kennedy Krieger, we've been turning them into neurons. We can do that within a 2 to 3 week period. And we can turn them into motor neurons, which is nice because these are one of the group of neurons affected in this disease, LBSL. And we can watch how these neurons grow in vitro. I had a video here, for whatever reason it's acting out, so I'm just gonna have you believe me that we can basically look at patients with LBSL. So these are 3 lines of LBSL, and we can look at controlled patients, and we can plate these neurons from these patients and have them grow in the dish, and we can see how these neurites grow. And we see that in the control population, the neurons grow further and faster compared to LBSL. So it seems to be a nice in vitro model for us to study. And then we're doing a lot of molecular studies to sort of get to the bottom of it, understand why. So another thing we're doing is we're making organoids from these iPSC. So we're making mini brains that allows us also then to do things like single cell RNA-seq to really delve into the disease mechanism and understand what's going on in this disorder. So I'm just going to end up here by showing a picture of the lab team again here. This was before COVID. We're looking forward to get together again like that. But I wanted also to thank all the foundations that have been supporting us over the year. And again, I hope that we are being helpful to the patient community. Thank you.